So we all like our retreats, right? We love spring retreat, we love momentum, we love fall retreat for so many reasons, right? We love it for the food, we love it for the camaraderie, we love it for the community, we like it for the speakers, for the worship, for the late nights. But there's some of you guys that like it for something else. And you know who you are when I say this, but some of you guys like it for the pranking. Guy pranking guy cabins, even girl pranking girl cabins, and that's a thing, right? And some of these people really enjoy just getting the funniest prank that you possibly can. Well, at our spring retreat that we just went on at Black Rock Retreat, there were a couple of you guys who chose to do some pranking, and there was some retaliation that happened because of it. So in one of the guy cabins, some of you guys decided that you were going to take some of our stuff, and it was actually my cabin that I was a part of, and you took all of our stuff, our bedding, and our pillows, and you chucked it into the bathroom in the stalls where the toilets were. And it all good fun and games, right? But there's one person in particular that kind of took this a little personally. And Mr. Jay Scott, our 11th and 12th grade small group leader, he decided to take it upon himself with a couple other people and retaliate back and take some of the mattresses of the other person's cabins, and they threw them on top of the roof of their cabin. And so here's a picture of it. See the mattresses up on top of the roof, right? And so Jay didn't really like this, you touching his stuff, and so he decided to retaliate. He decided to give you a little bit of a payback. Right? And so we know this, right? If you prank someone, you might get pranked back. That's just kind of a reality. But outside of retreats, this idea of payback is kind of a thing, unfortunately, right? When we get hurt, when we get wronged, we want to wrong somebody back. It's kind of in our sinful nature, if we're being honest, right? We don't like it sometimes about ourselves, but reality is that sometimes we kind of want to give in to payback. And so when someone hurts us, we want payback. When someone talks about us behind our back, we want payback. When somebody hurts a person we care about, we want payback. When somebody fails to text us back or invite us to a group outing, we want payback, right? And there's so many other examples of how you could say, man, I want to pay someone back for how they've wronged me or how they've hurt me. And the reality is, gang, is that we're not strangers to this, right? From comical examples of pranking to some really severe examples, right? We've been there. We've been hurt by the people that we trust most, the people that we love most, to the people that we have no idea who they are on social media, but we just want to get them back sometimes because, again, it's within our nature. If you hurt me, I want to hurt you. And so for most of us, payback can often come in the form of three ways. Way number one is public payback, right? You embarrassed me in front of my friends, I'm going to embarrass you in front of your friends. You disrespected me in front of my boyfriend or girlfriend, I'm going to make sure that you feel disrespected as well in front of your boyfriend or girlfriend. Many a times it comes in the form of passive payback. What this means is this idea of passive aggression, right? I'm not going to come right out and be a jerk to you, but I'm never going to be nice to you. And I'm going to be a little giving you the cold shoulder kind of respect, right? That we can do this, right? Many of us can be guilty of passive aggression. And so sometimes we do it through the form of passive payback. But then thirdly is imaginary payback. And what I mean by this simply is it's in our head. We never say it. We never actually speak it out loud. But man, we are thinking of the most conniving and the most gruesome ways that we could pay them back if we had the opportunity. And if we're being honest, we wrestle with this, right? Like we wrestle with the idea of I've been hurt and I want to hurt somebody back, but not even I want to hurt somebody back. Man, I'm just feeling hurt and the pain has strapped me down and I'm just not willing to forgive them because they've hurt me so much. And so it may not even be all the way to the form of payback, but it may be in the form of, man, I just am hurt and I can never forgive them for what they've done. We've all been there, right? We've all wrestled with this. And so as we continue to look at the story of Joseph, and we're going to land the plane today, finishing out what to do when you don't know what to do. And so today we're going to talk about what to do with payback, what to do when you've been hurt, what to do when you feel like I'm at my wit's end and I've been hurt so badly by this person. What do I do moving forward? And Joseph has been a beautiful case study for this, right? Because he's been hurt by his loved ones, the ones he thought would be the most trusting, the people who would care about him the most, sold him into slavery in Egypt. And so now we have Joseph now skipping ahead multiple years as we've been tracking through the life of Joseph. And we see that now he's been set up in a place of power. He's actually now second second in command to Pharaoh because he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. And then when he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, the Pharaoh entrusted him to what was going to happen with the famine. There was going to be a couple years of plenty where there's going to be tons of crops, and there's going to be a couple years of famine. And so Pharaoh set Joseph up to be in charge of the food when the famine would come. And so now the famine is here, and Joseph is still in command. And now his brothers actually travel a long ways to get to Egypt. And they are now in the presence of the person who is in charge of the food allocation. Okay? But they don't realize it's Joseph. And so they're having a conversation, the brothers and Joseph. And Joseph is seeing his brothers for the first time in 14 years, guys. 14 years is the first time he's seen his brothers, and now they're asking him for food. And I don't know about you, but if I was seeing my siblings for the first time in 14 years after they threw me into a pit and sold me into slavery, guys, I don't know about you, but I would be having a hard time not wanting to get some payback, not getting some revenge, because Joseph was in a position of power where he actually could do that. So as we jump into our text, let's see what happens when Joseph encounters his brothers for the first time in 14 years. Then Joseph could no longer control himself. Before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everybody leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence, okay? So they're in the palace, and they're asking for food, and they're having this dialogue, and at some point Joseph says, "I can't take it anymore," and he says, "I am Joseph," and then they're like, "Oh, crap. This is our brother. He's in charge. We could get thrown into prison. We could die right now." They were terrified when they saw him for the first time in 14 years. And they had no idea that this was happening. And so what happens next though, right? "And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me advisor to Pharaoh, lord of this entire household and ruler of all Egypt." Wow. That's a response. Again, put yourself in Joseph's shoes. If you were Joseph for the first time in 14 years, you have an opportunity, because you're also second in command of all of Pharaoh's possessions and belongings in the state. You have an opportunity that you could throw your brothers in prison with a snap of a finger, and it would be no problem whatsoever. But Joseph said, this is kind of crazy, right? He says, "But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God." Wow. Like, what? Joseph said, "It wasn't you who sent me here. You thought you sent me here. You thought you threw me into a pit. You thought that you sold me into slavery in Egypt, but it wasn't actually you. It was actually God who was sovereignly in control of the circumstance the whole time, that no matter how difficult it was getting, no matter how dark it was, no matter how much evil was happening, God was still in control, and God was still having his hand of sovereignty and being in control over the circumstance. And it was God who sent me here, and he made me advisor to the Pharaoh, and he put me in charge, and he is now the one who's going to give deliverance to you specifically." Guys, here's what's crazy, is that he actually called out the pain though, right? He did confront his brothers. He said, "Guys, you sold me into slavery." And he said, you tried to put me here, but it was really God who put me here. Here's what's crazy about this thought, is that Joseph was acknowledging their wrong and his hurt without creating more hurt. Here's the thing, is that there's so many times when we've been hurt that we don't really want to give them payback, but man, we want them to know how much they've hurt us. And in turn, we escalate the hurt by going full steam ahead and confronting them, wagging your finger in their face, right, and saying, "You hurt me, you did this to me, how could have you, shame on you," and we just escalate the hurt all the more by just wagging our finger in their face. Joseph didn't do that. He acknowledged the hurt, and he acknowledged his own pain, but he did not escalate it. And guys, I think that's something that we need to learn. We need to take a lesson from Joseph. There's a way that we can choose not to escalate the pain and escalate the situation, rather seeking out peace, seeking out reconciliation, seeking out forgiveness, rather than saying, yeah, I want you to know how much you hurt me. Joseph didn't do that, but we do this very often, right, if we're being honest. So forgiveness was not only for his brothers, but it was freedom from his own pain too. And here's the thing, guys, is that when we hold on to a lack of forgiveness, when we hold on to this notion of I want to get revenge or I want to get payback, when we hold on to that thought, so often it's us that's being chained up. It's us that is in prison because we are not pursuing the freedom and we're not living in the freedom that we potentially could live in Jesus, when we are continually holding on to the shackles of unforgiveness or the shackles of revenge. And so what would that look like for us to be a people that say, hey, I'm not going to live in unforgiveness. I'm not going to live in revenge, but I'm actually going to live in forgiveness, and I'm going to pursue peace instead of payback. So Joseph knew that, man, the only way to freedom is I got to forgive. And that's what he chose to do. And here's what's crazy is at verse 15, it says this, he kissed his brothers and he wept over them. And afterwards, his brothers talked with them. They re-entered into community. He said, you know what? I'm going to show mercy. You don't deserve it, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. I'm going to give you grace and mercy and love. I'm not going to give you payback. I'm not going to give you revenge. In fact, I'm going to pursue peace instead of payback. And so God can do an impossible thing, which he did in the life of Joseph, and he can bring peace when there has only been hurt. And we see that in the life of Joseph. There was so much hurt. There was so much pain, 14 years worth, but he said, I'm going to forgive. So what about you? Really what we want to say today is when you don't know what to do, pursue peace instead of payback. Guys, I don't know what hurt you've been through. I don't know what abuse you may have had, or what hurt has come from a best friend or from a loved one or from somebody on social media that you maybe don't even really know. I don't know what trauma has happened to you in that regard, but what would it look like for us to pursue peace instead of payback? What would that look like? Okay, when you pursue peace, you fight for a relationship. So often we want to fight relationships. So often we want, again, an eye for an eye. You hurt me, I hurt you. But what about pursuing peace and the idea of, man, I'm going to fight for the relationship rather than I'm going to fight the relationship? Would we be willing to do that? When you pursue peace, you fight for the relationship. When you pursue peace, you lay down your right to get payback. You put it in God's hands, guys. And I know that's so difficult, and I know it is. I know it is from my own hurt and from the own pain that I've experienced. It's so hard to say, no, God, okay, I'm not going to you're going to pry my hand open. I'm going to let you take it. You are the arbiter. You are the one who holds all truth, and you are the one who is the judge. You judge. I'm not the judge. So I'm going to live in peace. I'm going to let you judge, God. I'm going to let you stay sovereign. I'm going to let you be in control. Because here's the reality, guys, is that we deserve to be in hell. We deserve to be separated from God. We've caused cosmic treason against God of the universe. And he says, I'm going to forgive you anyways. I'm going to forgive Tony anyways. And I'm going to show mercy. And God pursued peace instead of payback. And we're called to do the same as Christ followers. We're called to do the same as Jesus followers. We're called to do the same as disciples of Christ. And so the question I want to ask you is, are you doing that? Are you choosing to pursue peace? And are you laying down your right to get payback? Even though you feel like you should, and even though you want to, are you laying down your rights to get payback? And so let me lay on the plane by asking these couple of questions. Is what do you need to decide? Maybe you haven't been hurt in the past. Maybe you haven't had some abuse or had someone betray you or something. And praise God if you haven't. But you're going to get hurt one day. So are you going to decide, I'm putting my foot in the ground right now, on a stake in the ground, I'm saying I'm not going to give in to payback. I'm not going to give in to revenge. I'm going to give in to forgiveness. I'm going to choose this day to be a forgiving person, a gracious person, a loving person, a merciful person. And if you have been hurt, man, are you going to decide, I'm going to forgive somebody? Is there someone who you need to forgive? And there's someone that you've been holding a grudge on for the years and years and years, or weeks and weeks, or just moments because it happened yesterday. Are you going to choose to forgive the way Jesus has forgiven you? Because we have been forgiven a great debt, guys. And we're called to forgive others as Jesus has forgiven us. And then lastly, what offense do you need to bring to God? What do you need to say, hey God, I need to be honest with you, and I just need to ask for forgiveness for the sins I've caused and I've done to you. Or maybe you need to go ask for forgiveness for somebody else that you have personally wronged. What about that? Maybe is there something that you have wronged yourself that you need to go and ask for forgiveness, guys? And so what would this look like for us to be a church, to be a youth group, to be a group of Jesus followers who said, when I don't know what to do, I'm going to pursue peace instead of payback. And what a beautiful idea from the life of Joseph. What a beautiful reality that we are called to follow in his footsteps. It is not easy. It is incredibly difficult. But I promise you it's worth it to walk in freedom of, rather than living in payback, living in peace. Rather than living in revenge, living in reconciliation. Would you be willing to do that today?